This week's episodes were brought to you by the generous support of Andrew Henninger. Hey you folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to another Unity tutorial where we're working on our base building game. In the last episode, we went and implemented what we believe to be the flood fill system by which we can determine... Build floor, thank you. By which we can determine if a room is enclosed or not. We are currently not getting any errors down here, but it doesn't mean that it's actually working. I can't confirm that once these walls get finished, that this becomes an enclosed room, so that there's a difference between, say, this room and the outside, nor can I confirm that when I click on this wall here, these are split in two rooms. We're going to test it in this episode, and we're going to do that, and we could have, as I said last time, we could have done it by running it through the debugger. We could have just outputted stuff to debug.log, but let's go and implement a tooltip system, which we're going to want anyway. And this is going to be a great time. The tooltip can tell us when we mouse over a tile what room we're in. So that's going to be one of the ways we can confirm whether whether this whole thing works or not. So how do we do a tooltip system? Well, first of all, we need some sort of UI element. And we can do, so let's go and create. So we've got our build menu, we've got our top menu. Let's create a new panel. Or something, you know, some kind of object. I mean, again, I think people often think that maybe panels and images and all these things do more than they are. Rather than create the panel directly, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to create an empty here. So this is a game object which exists within the canvas. It still uses a rect transform. It follows all the rules that we're used to for any UI element, but currently it doesn't do anything. It's not visible. So we can add a component to it. At this point, we've got lots of different component options. If we go down to UI, we can see what all the different UI components are. And, excuse me, you'll notice one thing is there's no component here called panel. A panel is just one of these game objects that has an image that is used for a background, and by default, the image is set to be semi-transparent with a partial alpha, and I think it sets some sort of dummy sprite in there to give you a nice border edge. It's one of these like background or UI sprite elements that are just, you know, put in there. So we get a little bit of rounded corner stuff and it looks sexy. That's all a panel is. I think a panel also sets a certain default with your anchors. I think when you create a panel, let's go and check. Create UI, panel. Yeah, it normally creates it like to fill up the whole screen, then you shrink it down. But you can see here, it's just an image component, and that's it. Nothing else going on there. This game object is exactly the same as that panel. It's also the same as if you create a sprite. And I know there's always still some confusion, but if we go and create, or rather an image, UI image, a UI image is exactly the same. It's just a game object that has an image script on it. But by default, it has full alpha assigned. So that's all. So I'm going to call this one, I don't know, our tooltip. I don't actually think, no, you know what? It's not going to be a tooltip that we're going to do. We're going to call this one a tile inspector. Right, and tooltip is usually something that appears when you mouse over something. And often it's attached to the mouse. In this case, instead of having it only appear when you mouse over appropriate things, because really, honestly, everything in our game is sort of going to be something you want to mouse over and get info. I mean, certainly, anywhere you mouse over in the game world, you're going to want info about what's under your tile. But rather than have it attached to the mouse, which might get a little bit too busy, we're just going to have it stuck to the bottom right corner of the screen, which we could do pretty easily. I'm going to hold Shift and Alt and just click on the right bottom anchor. That will set the pivot and also set the position very handily, get it down there. And we'll give it, I don't know, some bigger size. You can be 300 tall and 200 wide. It's maybe too big. I don't know, 200 by 200. Something like that. We'll figure it out. We can have it auto expand and resize later on or do a billion different things. For now, it's just a certain amount of space. We might still do tooltips in the game, which might be something more like when you mouse over a button, then you can get a tooltip with more text, you know, like what a button or a something actually does with a bit more detail. Or maybe in the case of a character, when you mouse over the character, it'll actually have a tooltip with a name there, so you don't have to sort of try to like mouse over a moving person and then move your eyes to the bottom right corner to track the info. Whereas here, you can just keep your mouse over the person as they walk, and you get the little tooltip about their name. We'll do that. Tooltips are real easy. Tooltips are basically just one of these UI elements that follows your mouse. It just has a script on it so that every frame it updates its position to be the same position as the mouse. That's all there is to it. All right, so we're going to keep the tile inspector little window in the bottom. Do I want to make it full? I don't know. It's fine. Let's go ahead and create some more UI elements in here. I'm going to create a text element. I'm going to, I don't know. I guess we'll jam it based on the top left corner and then give it a little bit of a border. Oh, I guess it's minus there. Like that, and then... Oh, you know what? Hold on. In the tile inspector. Yeah. rather than manually set positions in the tile inspector, let's put in a vertical layout group in there. So any element that we put inside of this get vertically laid out. I like that. And in the tile inspector in here, the vertical layout group, I can give it padding. So here I will say, yeah, keep like 4 pixels from the borders. That's going to feel good. Okay, good. And then we can also like grow and shrink this thing based on how many text elements we actually have in here, because depending on if the tile you mouse over has a piece of furniture or not, we might have fewer things in here or not. I don't know. We'll see. Let's have these be called, this is the line that tells us about the tile type. And it'll look something like tile type : empty. It'll look like something like that. We'll set these colors in a moment. We're probably going to want to have like a cool font. Right now we're still just using the default font. At some point we're going to want a cool font. We'll leave that out for later, but it's got to be something that's legible, but also sort of thematic to the space kind of thing. We'll see what we can hunt down. Okay, tile type. Part of the problem too, actually, if I include a font in this project, so font licensing is often kind of funny and tricksy. If you have a font, you can use it in your game, and then when you distribute your game, that is fine. And there, that this font is in there. But a lot of times you're not allowed to redistribute the font in and of itself. So if I include a font here in our list of resources, I'm actually not sure. It'll depend on the license of the specific font, whether I can include that font in the project download. So I'll have to hunt around for something with like just a CCO font or something like that. If you guys have a suggestion there, certainly email me with something and email me the actual web page with the info about the font licensing so that I know for sure it's safe for us to include in here. Obviously, it'll have to be free of cost. That would be a big bonus. Anyway, okay, tile type. The next line, we're going to have something like room ID, or room index is really what it comes down to. 000, just have some dummy info in there. We'll just rename the game object to make it handy. This one can be the furniture type. Nah. And it can be, we can say something like null if there's no furniture. And I guess for now we'll just have these 3 pieces of information. I'll go and shrink the tile inspector. There we go. Wanted this window open. We're just going to grab it and shrinkify that a bit. We'll make I guess we'll make this background pure white. Since we were using that for these other things, that's fine. So it's already pure white, but we'll make it completely opaque. And then just keep that in there. Doesn't look particularly pretty, but it is in place. Excellent. Whoops, I just reordered that, which is not what I meant to do. Can I just do that? Thank you. Room type, tile index, furniture type. Awesome. So, I mean, that's just in there. If we hit play, it's just there. But obviously, it's not responding to what is happening to the mouse. So, what we can do, or what we want to do, is every frame, we want these to get updated with the info about what's under the mouse. There's a couple of different places we can put this code. I think it's probably fine if we add a component to the tile inspector to do that. There's something to be said about each one of these could have their own component. So, something like, we can call it a script called UI update tile type text or something like that. And you just throw that component on here, and it'll update the text component of whatever it's attached to based on the tile type under the mouse or something. I think that might start to get a bit annoying to have a bunch of these little separate scripts. But I don't know, actually, it might be nice. The alternative is having one component on Tile Inspector that finds its children and assigns them that way. But that's less reusable. You know what I mean? F it, let's do something like that. So we have scripts, we have controllers, models. This is really, it's going to be like a UI category. Let's create a new folder for UI, and it's going to be a simple little script. All it does is, I'm going to start it with UI, tile type, like mouse over tile type text. There we go. Something like that. And I'm going to add it to tile type. It's going to be a simple script that checks open. Probably doesn't need a start, but every frame, this script checks to see which tile is under the mouse, and then updates the text.text parameter of, or actually I'll write it differently, the get component text.text parameter of the object it is attached to. So let's do something like, so we are going to have to include using Unity engine.ui because that text class belongs there. And let's create something like my text, which we'll grab and start. My text is equal to get component text. Now, I've talked about before, since Unity whatever, it's not important to cache this on your own because Unity does a proper job of caching this internally now and being very fast, where this didn't used to be the sort of thing that you want to do every single frame. But this is fine, and the real reason I'm doing this, and I guess I didn't have to do this, I could just do an if get component text, but I'll say if my text is equal to null, then we can do something like debug log error no text UI component on this object, like that. So we just complain, hey, you forgot to attach a text component, or you put me on something that doesn't have a text component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go gameObject.set active to be false. Or actually, rather than doing that, I'm just going to turn off this script. Yeah. So enabled, set it to false. That way it's no longer going to run every frame. So when time update comes around, we know everything is groovy. So how do we find out what tile our mouse is over? Well, this is a 2D program, and certainly the way to do it could be to do a physics 2D dot, we can do a raycast, and we can do that. When we can do this raycast every single frame. And that's fast enough, but here's the thing. There's a lot of things in our game that would probably like to know, hey, what tile is my mouse over right now? And the thing is, we actually already do this. We have a mouse controller script over here, and it is responsible for knowing, well, that's actually responsible for moving things. Is it also responsible for building things? Yes, it is. Right? If we click, it starts to do some drag, and it finds out our coordinate. Actually, that's right. I forgot. Right now, we have a one-to-one scaling. With our world and our position. No, I guess we do work it. Screen, yeah, that's right. No, screen to world point. Yeah. So this curve frame position is the current position of the mouse in world space. And we have that, and we can apply it, we can let the public know about it. If I did something like public void get mouse position in world space or something, but this is fine. Something like this, right? Return. Whoa, what the hell did I do? I deleted something that I didn't want to do. I'm going to do one of these. Gets the mouse position in world space. Because then MonoDevelop will give us a nice little tooltip when we use this and remind us that it is correctly in world space. So it's going to return curve frame position. So this is the mouse position in world space. And then in addition to that, I can have a public void get tile under mouse. Get mouse over tile. Maybe something like that. Get mouse over tile. Which we know, I mean, we've been using it down here. Oh yeah. The current drag position, all those things, current frame position. It's all based on that stuff over there. There we go. Drag position start, current position start. That maps. Because our tiles are currently 1-to-1, this maps. So we can get the mouse over the tile is simply return world. How do we do it? World controller? How am I currently getting the world? I should actually have a little helper for that, so I don't have to remember. World controller.instance.world get tile at. Yeah. Actually, hold on. Let me back up a step. Let me make a... It doesn't have to be a public function. It returns a tile. Tile from world position. I wonder how I want to do that. Because my idea, like, okay, you know what? Let's just do this for now. Later on, if we end up changing the scale of the tiles so that our tiles don't really match the world space one-to-one. So for example, if visually speaking our tiles, we decided, oh, they should be bigger, we're going to make them 2 by 2 in the world. So then you can't just say, okay, I've got world coordinates 5,6, so I know that that's tile 5,6. Instead, we've got to go and manipulate one from the other. I don't know why we would do that, so probably we can keep assuming that the tile space and the world space is one-to-one. But later on, we might want to create a helper function for that. But anyway, current frame position.x, current frame position.y. So this will return the tile that the mouse is currently hovering over. So we can get the mouse world position, but we can also get the tile that the mouse is currently over, which is what we care about over here. So we're going to say something like tile t is equal to, I guess we want to keep an instance of that. Mouse controller equals GameObject.get or .find object of type mouse controller. We don't have like a mouse controller.instance or anything like that, do we? Because that could be. Let's not worry about it. I don't think that's the sort of thing. I don't think a lot of things need to do this lookup. If mouse controller is equal to null, debug.log error. How do we not have an instance of mouse controller? It's really weird, but let's do that anyway. Okay, so we'll grab a copy of that. So, tile t is equal to mouse controller dot mouse over tile. Perfect. So this will simply return what tile we're over, and then we can feed that information in, which is to say our my text should be formatted as something like tile type boop plus t dot type dot toString. And so tile type is an enum, and it actually has a very helpful toString where it will Englishify. It won't return just a number or whatever. It should return something like tile underscore empty or tile underscore floor or however the hell we have it working. Let's see what happens. Excellent, we're getting errors. Return keyword must not be followed by... Oh, it's a void. Herpaderp. I think these are vector 3s. Could be vector 2s, but there we go. And that's another void. This should return a tile. So used to going public void blah. Okay, and then we've got an error over here. Oh, because this is expecting integers. We're feeding it in floats, but it's expecting in integers. And yeah, floor to int should be fine. So mathf.floor to int. I mean, we could just cast it to an integer, which does exactly the same thing as this as far as I know, but I think we were just being a bit more explicit, and I'm going to go ahead and be consistent. There we go. So now we are passing integers to get tile at instead of floats. Okay, one more error. Oh, yes, we can't set my text to be a string. It's my text.text that we feed to a string. Okay, let's hit play. Okay, we mouse over, tile type empty. Actually, was that my like default little string? Let me make sure. Blah. There we go. So now it'll confirm that when we hit play and when we mouse over things, okay, it's saying empty. Let me go and build some floors over here. There we go. Tile type floor. You see how it's switching? Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this baseline script over here, almost like the sort of thing that could be, this could be a good subclass thing, honestly, because, you know, again, we're repeating the same thing sort of over and over between all these instances, and what if we make a change later? Let's just go for now. We're going to make a duplicate and a duplicate, and this is going to be called mouse over room index. Yeah, and I think subclass in this later would be really cool. Mouse over furniture type, like that. Let's open that and open that. And mono develop. Okay, he's having a really hard time with this. Oh, tile type text. Yeah, I should probably leave the text in there to be consistent. Yeah, let's do that. This is going to be the actual name of that. I'll rename the file afterwards, and this one is going to be mouse over room index. So now, all we have to do is change what the text is generating. Everything else is the same, which is one of the reasons I said, oh, it might be good to subclass. Mouse over furniture type. So in here, we get the tile that we're in, and then let's make a string called F, or S for string. Excellent. Which is going to be defaulting to null. And then if t.furniture not equals null, then we set S to be equal to t.furniture.object type, which is the name of the furniture. And then we call this one furniture S. There we go. So that's that one. And then the room index needs a wee bit more work. Room index. And really, I can say t.world.rooms.find index. Yeah, me from the past. I'm going to stop you right there before you spend the next 2 minutes wondering why find index is not doing the thing you want. It's like, well, yeah, but we got to put in a function here for, like, you know, the predicate matches, or if we use binary search, right? But we need to implement iCompare. What am I thinking of? It's because it's not find index that I want, it's index of that I'm looking for. Index of is a simple function that takes in a thingy, in this case a room, because this is our list of rooms, and returns the index of that room in our array. And if that room is not in that array, or rather that list, it will return -1. So we can just toStringify this like that, that's fine. Also, I've gone ahead and renamed these two files. So mouse over room index text, and the other one, tile type text, right? I've renamed the files because I think when you guys last just saw it, we had the we'd renamed the class but not the file. So make sure you have renamed both, and then also make sure you go into your canvas and actually add, because our tile type had our component added, but room index and furniture type both need those components added in there. I was like, what's going on? And I went in to try things, and finally I realized I'm just using the wrong function. Their names are too similar. So use index of. So, but now if we hit play, we should, there we go. So if we mouse over things, right now all the tiles are empty. It's returning that our room index is 0, and our furniture in this tile is null. There's no furniture in these tiles. Let's go and drop down some floors. There we go. Empty, floor, empty, floor, empty, floor. Let's go and start building some walls like that. And as they get constructed, we can see, very interesting. The walls do not belong to any rooms whatsoever. They are the divider between rooms. Therefore, they're correctly reporting they are not in the world.rooms list. Therefore, we're getting -1 as an index. We could, if we wanted to, we could go and do something a little more sexy in here where, you know, returns, we check to see if it's -1. If it is, then the text is like, you know, not a room or something like that. But yeah, you know what, they'll leave the -1 in there. That's perfectly fine. Currently correctly returns that the furniture in this tile is wall. That's pretty good. Let's go and build out an actual section over here. And once this becomes enclosed, we'll see if it becomes, indeed it does, room index 1. So we've got 0. And everywhere here is outside. It's 0. We've got the wall, which is -1. And we've got in here, which is 1. Let's go and divide this room into 2. 1, 2. Beautiful. Let's try it with our actual little saved room over here. And actually, I was worried when we would load this that it might be slow, because I believe, I'm not sure, we'll have to check. Every time we put a piece of wall down here, I think it generates a flood fill request at that time. So loading in this map can take a long time. We might want to optimize that later on, where we don't do any flood fills while the map is being constructed, but then we have to make sure to go and do all the right flood fills. And how do we know which ones to do that on, which tiles to start flood fill, because we don't want to miss any, but we don't want to like just start a flood fill on every single tile. Maybe just having the flood fill start as we put down all the walls is fine. Maybe what? Maybe what? I guess what you could do is you could loop through every piece of furniture in the game and only start a flood fill, like in that initial load, loop through every piece of furniture in the game, check adjacent tiles, and only start the flood fill if one of the tiles is flagged as outside. Because obviously we don't need to flood fill somewhere that's not already outside. Right now, we do have to flood fill. When we go and put down a tile, we do have to flood fill even when there's a non-outside room next to us, because we might be splitting that room in two, right? But on game load, we don't have to flood fill anywhere that's not outside, because clearly that is the correct room already set up. Let's go ahead and make sure that splitting this in 4 works. Room index 1, 2, okay, 0. Oh, right, that's outside. Of course that's outside. Let's go ahead and close that, actually. Let's see what happens once we finish that. So we got, there we go, room index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the actual room index number doesn't matter to us. This is just confirming that A, it's actually in the list of world.rooms, and B, we can tell that these 2 rooms are different because they're at a different place in the list. If that list gets resorted, reordered in some way, doesn't affect us in any way whatsoever. There's like a little bit of a thing in that when we do go and, divide this, then room 7, there's still going to be a room with index 7. It's up here, but this is a completely different room than before. The previous room that was at index 7 should now be completely wiped from memory and should be gone entirely. And so we get 2 new ones. It's going to be very important for us to copy things like atmospheric information from one of these to the other. In particular, now that I think about it, if I were to go and just drop a single tile in here, this previous room 6 actually gets destroyed and a new room replaces it. Which, again, maybe there's ways to avoid that. Maybe we keep one of the old rooms around, but I think that might invite a few more problems than it solves. And I think it is perfectly fine for us to say, listen, the previous room is clearly invalid. We're going to create it. We happen to only be creating one new room, and we're also going to copy all that stuff. So all the previous atmospheric info from this room is going to be copied into the new room, which is the same case over here. The previous atmospheric info of the room that was defined as this area here is going to get copied into both of the others. They're both going to have, one atmosphere worth of pressure and 20% oxygen or something of that nature. So I think it'll be okay, but we do have to remember that these rooms do get wiped out and recreated all the time. And sometimes it's good. Other times, logically, we don't need to blow away this room and replace it, but it's probably fine if it does. There might be some optimization we can come up with. If I guess from our starting tile over here, if literally all 4 neighbors, actually from our tile here, when we put down our furniture, if the end result is that every single neighbor of that tile, it belongs to the same room or isn't a room, right? Same thing. If we put this here, then one of our neighbors isn't in a room at all because it's wall. But what's important is that the other 3 are all part of the same room. Then we don't actually need to create a new room at all. And when we said, and we did create a new room, right? We moved all the tiles from the old room into the new one. We could then put all the tiles back into the old one and leave it in position. But then we're having to do the reassignment, and we're having to take things out of one list and add things to another list all over again. Well, I guess we still do have to go through every single tile in here and reassign them back to the old room. We wouldn't have to necessarily make any changes to the list because we could just assign one list to the other. I don't think that's a win, though. Well, we'll look into that going forward. It feels a little unnecessary to blow away the old room and replace it with a new room that is effectively exactly the same, except for, one tile difference. But I think if we're going to have to go through, assuming like we have things like job queues and inventories and stuff that belong to an individual room, we have to go and most of the time reassign those jobs to new rooms anyway. Like, if this room gets split in 2 like this, I mean, obviously this one here becomes inaccessible, but imagine that we've put in a door instead, which we could do if I reload this. Right, and we go up here, is I could go and go wall, and a door in between. And now, again, these are two separate rooms. This is room index 4, this is room index 3. So it's still walkable from one to the other. But we have to reassign where all the inventory and any jobs or anything like that that actually points to rooms, those all have to be reassigned to the new room as well. And so that's another example of if we don't have to recreate the room, which is what happens most of the time, I guess. Because at this point, we don't have to recreate the room. And at this point, we don't actually have to recreate the room. And at this point, we don't have to recreate the room. It's only when we put in this final one that the room actually gets split. So there might be an optimization win. Let's not worry about it for now. We're not going to worry about it until we start to notice slowdowns in our program, and we're realizing, oh yeah, you know, with the amount of territory there is and how many data structures have to be updated, that's what it comes down to. When we create a new room, or recreate effectively the same room, which is what happens when we do this here, how much of the data structures actually have to get updated to point from the old room to the new room? If that's a big time-consuming job, then we will care about trying to cut down how often that happens. But I actually don't think that's going to be a very big time-consuming job. I think the thing that's the most time-consuming is the actual flood fill and assigning tiles to the new room. And I think it would be more time-consuming if we decided to roll that back and just put them back in the old room once more. So I think this is actually the fastest way, even though every now and again it'll be a little bit silly and feel like, you know, well, there's not really, from a conceptual point of view, there's not really a new room being created here. But in practice there is, hey, look, we found a bug. If we were to put down a new door over here, it would be correctly oriented, but this existing door does not get updated, so we'll have to go and deal with that in the future. But for now, very important code has been put down now. We've got this room identification, really, really, really powerful and important part of what we're going to be doing. Again, if nothing else, we need this to be able to track whether or not a room is enclosed so that we can tell something about its atmospheric levels. But later on, I really suspect that this is going to come into play for optimizing jobs and inventory and all that. But that is going to be in the future. We don't have to worry about it for now. So we'll see how it goes. For now, thank you very much for watching another episode, folks, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Thank you to everyone who pledged to support this in February and is making these videos happen through March and early April. And of course, these mic check supporters. We've got Wes Eldenboving again, Craig Mortel, Nail Vikstrom, Neil Blakely Milner, Speedy Savant, Valiant Cake Fiend, Aaron Toyson, Marius Field Vold, Peter Talgo, probably Ole, Julian Ogier, Lafone, Steven Stager, Michael McClintock, Kale the Quick, Drazion, Bite Rash, Adjective, and Andrew Henninger. And everyone who just watches and shares and favorites and comments and subscribes, thank you so much for just continuing to make these videos a thing that we can do. I think it's pretty awesome, and I hope you do too. See you next time, folks.